Well, it's a pleasure to be visiting with Bobby Marks here at the NBA Summer League. You worked in front offices with New Jersey and with Brooklyn. Is it, when you see all these free agent signings, does this bring back great memories and you evaluating all this stuff?
Well, I don't know if I've ever seen a summer like this. So what we've seen in the last 10 days here, as far as the player movement, not really the size of contracts, but how many stars have moved of different places here. I think it brings a lot about parity. I mean, I think we see a lot of parity in this league here right now, and I think certainly what the Clippers have done and what Sacramento has done, that the Western Conference is loading up to be probably the toughest that we've seen in a long time here.
So I'm sure when you were in front office, you're trying to get your roster, build young guys, and have a core of the future. But to see the amount of stars that have changed teams, I know it is probably exciting, but how agonizing is it for front office guys?
Well, because, for example, in Oklahoma City, you're under the impression you have Paul George for probably 4 years, not that you're going to trade him a year after you signed him with 2 years left on his contract. So, yeah, it's, and I think it puts a lot of pressure on you that although you have this player in a contract for the foreseeable future, it's not good enough to, as far as what is around. And it's a little different than maybe the first round rookie scale players or even the players on that next contract. But yeah, I mean, the pressure of players, the ability to recruit others from other teams, and as long as it's not going to be addressed, which I don't think, it's going to be a situation like that probably for the foreseeable future.
In your years of experience with this, is there something you found that free agents hung on to why they picked a team? Is it location? Is it money? Maybe state taxes. I mean, there's a lot of different things, set system. Is there something that outweighs the other?
It used to be about the market, right? New York and LA were usually the big destinations here. Then it shifted a little bit where it was more about winning as far as who they can team up with, either if you're in Miami or another location here. And now it's about, I think it's more about winning than financial gains. And how the CBA is structured is that the ability to retain your own is based on monetary. Like Kawhi Leonard could have earned $190 million in Toronto, but he earned $141 with the Clippers. So that's a $49 million difference that he's leaving on the table. And I think these guys this is their third contract here. They get to a certain point where they've earned a lot of money already, where maybe they can make up that difference with marketing endorsements here. So yeah, I mean, I think the goal is always to financially. I don't know how, unless we start franchising tagging players and teams lose draft picks if they sign a player. But there's not much more you can do as far as if it's not going to be finances.
I'm always fascinated by the front office and how let's take Durant for example. I'm sure every team's interested, but were the Kings, were the Magic, were they realistic in going after him, or do they even just waste it? Why do they waste their time?
Well, you're right, and I think you saw that with the Knicks and Kawhi Leonard, right? They were interested in him, but it got to a point where you have to move on if you don't think you're a realistic, choice for him. And yeah, I think with Kevin, you could have had 30 teams lined up, but at the end of the day, there's probably 3 teams that maybe had a realistic chance to go out and sign him.
So when you're going after a guy, and maybe, do you know that other teams are for sure? So when you're trying to find the sweet spot of the salary, of the years, of how you lure him, how difficult is that knowing that, hey, I'm sure the agent's talking him up, but finding the right contract?
Well, you're right, and I think it's funny, like, we have the moratorium, and June 30th kicks off, and then all of a sudden you see guys come off the board. It's not coincidence. A lot of teams are already doing their homework starting once the season's over to find out what the price range of that player is going to be. Everybody knows who has money to spend. If you are one of 11 teams that have cap space, or you're a team like maybe San Antonio who just has their full mid-level exception. So if you think you are if you are trying to compete for a player in that 12 to 14 million, if you're trying to compete for a Trevor Ariza, you know that it's probably going to cost you more than the mid-level, which is 9.3. So who are the other teams that would fit? And I think you kind of start eliminating teams. Like where, if it's for Trevor, it's about trying to win now. So maybe you eliminate a team like Atlanta. Maybe you eliminate a team like Chicago. So you kind of just go down there. The one thing you don't want to do is kind of bid against yourself.
Right.
We always see that. It's like, we see a guy come in at $16 million and we had him ranging at $8-10 million. I think teams are smart enough now that they've kind of figured that out.
Talking with Bobby Marks here on Sports 1140 KHTK. So if we go to Sacramento, talk about the Kings specifically, we always say, Bobby, that, well, they probably to lure somebody have to overpay. Is that a fair statement, or I don't know. Is that even an accurate statement?
I don't know about overpay. I mean, I think where Harrison is, we'll start with Harrison's contract. His number comes right in where he opted out of, and he added 3 years on there, and he's still in the prime of, he's certainly in the prime of his career. So I don't think that's an overpay. I think it helped that you got him at the trade deadline. So at least he has a familiarity with the organization. You might have had to overpay him if he was a free agent from another team, because maybe he didn't know anything about the Kings itself. I think with Trevor, his second year is not fully guaranteed, so it gives you the flexibility. We've talked about Dwayne. He's got a 3-year deal. Third year is not guaranteed. Same with Corey Joseph. So you might have had to overpay in the first year, but it gives you the flexibility kind of on the back end here.
What do you think of the Kings? Well, they're constructed financially and as a roster.
I would be disappointed if they don't make the playoffs.
Really?
I would say that, and it's funny. I caught a lot of heat about a week ago when I said that Golden State was not a playoff team, and it really was nothing against. There was nothing against the Warriors, but I look at how the Western Conference is right now, where Golden State is with their injuries, with the Thompson injury, how the ability to fill out their bench with a lot of restrictions. I'm probably scarred a little bit from Game 3 watching that group out there without Clay and KD. But I look at where Sacramento was last year and where they are this year, where you don't lose. You lose really Willie as your main guy, but you bring back the core of this team, and then you add 4 veterans here. But I think there's some separation between maybe the top 5 in the West. But I think from 6 on to 10, we can make an argument for Sacramento, Golden State, New Orleans, San Antonio, teams that are kind of in that group there.
So it seems like Vlade's philosophy is to build the future with Fox, with Bagley, with Buddy, those Giles maybe. Can that successfully work where I don't know if they max them all, but kind of grow them all internally and have to pay them all big-time money?
Well, and I think that's why you saw with their contracts how he's lined them up. So when De'Aaron is up, you'll have the flexibility of the players you just signed, except for Harrison. These players now come off here, and it will be interesting. You've got Buddy Hield, who's extension eligible. As far as what direction do you go with him this summer? You probably won't have as great flexibility next year, so you can maybe take a little bit more of an aggressive approach there.
Do you literally know everybody's cap and contract?
It's funny. My wife thinks I'm crazy.
You have spreadsheets?
I'm rattling off numbers and names and stuff like that, and she's like, "How do you do?" Even like we did when Kawhi broke. They're like, "We need you for TV at 4:30 in the morning," and I'm like, "All right, I think I can do it because I know I'm just a train there." So yeah, I think it's just it's just really just preparing. Really, this summer of 2019 free agency, we've been working on that since August of last year, just to kind of prepare yourself for that.
Few stragglers left. Any contract that you went, wow, positively or negatively across the league?
I thought the Malcolm Brogdon number was a little rich. Maybe 4 for 85, great for Malcolm, but it's a little bit of a big number, and Indiana had to give up a number 1 and number 2 for that. So that's probably a little bit of on the high end. I think you've seen a lot of value the last. Avery Bradley at the room mid level at 4.8 is a really strong number. But there's no contract out there from the summer of 16 when we saw Luol Deng and Mozgov and Mahinmi and those guys was 4 for 72. The closest thing was Bojan Bogdanovic, and that's a good value for his position and everything.
And now we're even hearing Russ is a talented player, but it's hard to move that contract. Sure. Well, he's probably worth that, but those things, John Wall, how do you move those kind of deals?
Well, and that's the Supermax for you. Supermax great is if you want to retain your guys, but there's the negative as far as when you want to move them. So 4 for 170, it's hard, especially in the summer when all these free agents that have just signed can't be traded.
Right. And
now you're looking at the pool of teams is a lot smaller than maybe when it is come December and January. And it's funny, I always say this is the honeymoon period. Everyone loves their roster and stuff, but what happens when you get to January and maybe they don't love their roster? Maybe the parameters change a little bit there.
All right, last thing, especially since we're in Vegas, asking everybody this. You got your money, you're going to bet on a team today. Everything's not finalized, but who are you betting to win the championship today?
I'm going to say Denver.
Really?
I love what Denver did. I really do. I think the Jeremy Grant addition yesterday from Oklahoma City, and they bring back 12. They bring back their whole crew here. 1 game away from the playoffs. I think the narrative of they're young and they haven't any experience, I think that can kind of go out the window. I think they've already experienced that.
That's awesome. And so now you get a chance to relax and not look at numbers pretty soon?
Not quite yet there. I think I'm about 2 weeks away. I haven't been home since June 9th.
Oh, my gosh.
So I've been living out of a suitcase here. So I'm looking forward to going home on Friday to see my kids and but I'll be in withdrawal probably come August.
There you go. Thanks, Bobby.
You're welcome. Thanks.
The Drive.